I'm Craig Kenneth, a relationship coach and a psychotherapist. Every relationship is different and every breakup is different. Work with me and you'll get professional help on your situation. And if you're in no contact, focused on personal growth, my workbook series, The Knowledge, will help you make changes like you've never made before. Available now at AskCraig.net. Hi there, I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
I'm Coach Margaret.
And today we're going to be talking about, is your ex manipulating you? Mm-hmm. A lot of people worry about this, Margaret.
Yes, they do.
A lot of people, I think, will hear stuff on the internet about your ex is doing a fake breakup, right? That they're only breaking up with you to get what they want in some way. And yes, that does happen sometimes. That somebody has been frustrated by not getting their needs met for a long time.
Well, because you won't make a commitment.
Mm-hmm. And so they'll break up with you because and it's not that they really want to, it's just that they've given up that they're ever going to get what they want from you.
Unless they do something dramatic.
But a lot of times they really do mean that. Like they really are just that fed up that they can't take it anymore.
Yes, of course. And then I think that's an honest response, really, more than a manipulation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of bad advice when it comes to manipulation.
Absolutely, and that's one of the reasons why I want to address it. And every other minute you hear, well, so-and-so is narcissistic and he manipulates, or she's a borderline and she manipulates.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. So maybe we could talk about what manipulation is. How do you know when somebody's doing it? Is somebody's ex really manipulating you? Or is it because they're, just been unhappy for a long time and they really can't take it anymore?
And I think sometimes when we don't know the answer, we tend to turn to manipulation as a possible explanation. And it has been dangerous in some cases, and I'm going to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Margaret has got some good information today, and it's really helpful to understand this because chances are you've heard some bad advice about manipulation. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to start with two ridiculous examples. My astrologist told me that if you don't pay careful attention to this presentation, your roof will blow off in the next storm. So what am I trying to do there? I'm trying to get you to pay attention to this presentation by telling you that if you don't, something awful will happen to you. So it's really a veiled threat, okay? Mm-hmm. The next one is, if you cared about me, you would commit this presentation to memory. And that's manipulation by guilt trip, okay? And that's a famous way of manipulating, okay? And you often hear that with parents and grown-up children who aren't going along with the parents' program, okay?
Certain cultures are known to be using guilt as a manipulation.
I'm almost ready to say it's universal.
Yeah?
Yeah.
My mom was Italian, so she would even joke about the Italian guilt.
Oh, yes. Well, sure, I'm Irish, and everybody talked about the Irish guilt and the Irish Martyr Act. Now, the Irish Martyr Act is, I'll be okay. You don't want to give me the week off next week. I'll be okay. I'll probably just catch Diaphaleucus and so forth and so on.
Is that a dinosaur, Diaphaleucus?
Diaphaleucus, yeah.
It sounds like a dinosaur.
I've heard that you get it from eating too many donut holes. So manipulation comes in many forms, but we hear it all of the time now. Okay, so-and-so is manipulative. And on the simplest level, instead of asking what they want, this person doesn't do that directly for whatever reason. Maybe they got in trouble for it when they were little for asking for anything. They try to somehow get what they want by fooling you, which is the unfair part of it.
Yeah.
Okay? Mm-hmm. I'm not going to tell you directly what I want from you, but I'm going to do everything I can to get you to do what I want. And hope you don't notice I'm manipulating you.
And one of the things, let me interject for a sec, Mark. One of the things that's so important for you guys to realize is that when your partner does ask you for what you want, you need to be emotionally attuned enough to them that you get it and you do something about it.
That's right.
How many of you out there right now are thinking, my partner asked me to do XYZ 500 times and I didn't do it, and that's why they dumped me? I mean, that wasn't a manipulation. They were asking you for what they needed, and you got to get better at that.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose, I don't know, it would be a manipulation. Two opposites to manipulation are negotiation and asking what you want up front. Okay? You could say, well, what if I reduce it to 400 times or 300 times? And like I say, I found it very helpful to think of it as the opposite of negotiation. Okay? All right, we hear a whole lot about manipulation these days, mainly because we associate it with narcissistic and abusive people, unfortunately, usually men. Okay? That's not to say that women don't do the same thing. So we talk a lot about narcissistic personality disorder and borderline personality disorder. Okay? And that's where we hear the term manipulation tossed around all the time. Mm-hmm. Now, a personality disorder is not a major mental illness that you can take medication for. A personality disorder means you have a difficult time negotiating relationships in this world. Sometimes in one area of your life, sometimes in several. Okay? And there's no medication for it. The person doesn't know they're doing it. Oftentimes, when they do, it's a little more annoying. And it's hugely serious because it can absolutely wreck your functioning.
And I think you just made a major point there that a lot of people ask. Do they realize they're doing it?
No, not in the beginning, they don't. And one of the most honest things you can do, and I've said it directly to people, you're trying to manipulate me. You don't have to. Just tell me what you want. Okay? All right? Mm-hmm. But I think many people are very much afraid to ask for anything. I mean, if you grew up in a household where you got in all kinds of trouble if you did, and parents told you there wasn't any money and how come you were so selfish and so forth and so on, you give up and you don't ask anymore. All right? And I think the time when people start to begin to be manipulative is when they've learned that asking for what they want or need isn't going to happen. Mm-hmm. Okay? So you try to find another way. All right? But if you are the person who has the personality disorder, what you have to do is listen to other people's feedback. And it's hard. Okay? I didn't think I was being obnoxious. I just tried to tell you what was in it for you. And me. Mostly me. Mm-hmm. All right. These two conditions involve very early developmental failure, and both are very serious. They are serious to the extent that they can prevent people from living a normal life. Okay? If you're borderline and you're out all the time because you've been hospitalized, that's not going to help you in your employment. If you're narcissistic and try to manipulate everybody, even your colleagues at work, that's not going to help you either. Okay? All right. Freud said that health is to be able to love and to work. And if you have either of these diagnoses, it's not going to be easy for you to do either one. Mm-hmm. Okay? What percent of the U.S. population is diagnosed with at least one personality disorder? The estimate is 15%, or about 30 million people. Okay? So it's not weird or unusual. It's pretty common. All right? And there are variations on the theme, of course, and varying degrees of severity.
Sure.
All right? Now, should we write off all of these people as untreatable or even deliberately difficult to others? Of course not. All right?
I saw a comment recently. Somebody seemed very upset that when you were talking about that narcissists can change, it's giving people false hope and that they're going to stay in an abusive relationship.
Well, I certainly would not recommend that. And there are no circumstances under which you should continue in an abusive relationship. However, narcissists, like any other person, can change if they're willing to, and only if they're willing to. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that.
Okay.
Okay? But I would never, ever suggest that anyone stay in any relationship waiting for someone with a personality disorder to change unless it's a negotiated deal. All right? All right. The two conditions we're talking about today, narcissism and borderline, are, at least in my opinion, the result of unfortunate conditions in early childhood. This is certainly not the child's fault. So if you become one of these things, it isn't that you decided to. All right? It's a response to what doesn't happen for you when you're really little.
Yeah.
We are totally dependent when we come into the world and have to depend on the adults around us to care for us. If for any reason, not necessarily indicting the parents, this process goes wrong, a personality disorder can result. Okay? So if your needs aren't met, through no fault of your own, you're going to develop some strange coping mechanisms. Some families are like a war zone with everybody fighting and throwing things at each other. Some people live in dire poverty and can't make ends meet and can't get it together. Some people have 6 children and are trying to take care of all of them at the same time they're trying to hold a job. So blame is not a healthy or helpful concept in understanding this. When I came on the scene in mental health in the early 1200s,
sounds right.
These folks were all written off as untreatable and almost as immoral. Okay? So-and-so's manipulating, therefore they are a terrible person. We used to call personality disorders character disorders. Now, doesn't that have a moralistic ring to it? Okay?
Yeah.
In fact, the Army still uses the old term of character disorder. When they want to discharge someone, they'll discharge them with a diagnosis of character disorder.
Interesting.
Isn't that interesting? I think most of the armed forces do that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, but you get the flavor that it's always been kind of moralistic. Because these conditions are difficult to deal with, and the people who have them are often angry and needy at the same time, there's a mixed message. Many mental health practitioners have not wanted to work with these folks, borderline or narcissistic, or do research on how to help them better. 2 things have happened to improve this situation. One is that many wonderful researchers have been able to help us understand the early life of a child. That's not something we understood 50 years ago or even 30 years ago. And I think a lot of it came in with research that was done during and after World War II. Lord knows what they thought about borderlines back there. Although actually I can tell you, which I'll do later. The second one is that advocates for sexually abused and otherwise traumatized women raised major objections to the diagnosis of borderline as being pejorative to women, damning and telling them they were no good, is what that means. Mm-hmm. And awful things were said about women. In the early days, it meant that women were not believed and were written off as manipulative or just wanting attention. That's my least favorite one.
And that's one, attention. I think that's one of the more common things that you hear.
Oh, yes. Yeah, he just wants attention. Really, I don't think your attention is worth cutting yourself and trying to make a suicide attempt. Now, it might be nice to have your attention, but give me a break. Yeah. And you're right, that's what you hear. So women were not believed when they reported sexual abuse and were written off as manipulative. Okay? Adolescents still are written off as manipulative. And not paid attention to. I'm going to tell you a story. When I worked for the Department of Social Services in Massachusetts, where we dealt with adolescents and their various problems, I had to remind my treatment team once that whether the young woman in question was mentally ill or not was not important, because she would be just as dead if she jumped off the bridge as she had threatened. Whether she was manipulating or whether she was in that much pain, she would be just as dead. So I really didn't care whether she was manipulating or not, okay? Because if you're manipulating like that and sort of bargaining with death, that's serious business. And people don't do that just to get attention, okay? No matter how often you hear it.
And I think that is one of the most common things you hear about it.
Absolutely. And borderlines, even now, you'll hear, well, so-and-so's borderline, they're just manipulating. You can't believe a word they say. Well, yes, you can, sometimes. And if you're familiar with it all, you can oftentimes sort out. All right? But, yeah, I may go crazy sometime when I hear they just did it for attention. I heard some commentator on TV, remember the BTK murderer, serial killer? He lived a normal life but would go tie up and kill women. And I remember some reporter saying one day, well, he only did it for attention. No. No. Give me a break.
Wow.
All right? So that's in many ways been our go-to when we don't understand what's happening.
Point.
Yeah. I predict a backlash with the objections that too many males are now being called narcissistic and written off as moral failures. It happened to the women, and there was a backlash. I think it's now happening to the men, and there's going to be a backlash, and that's as it should be. It may help us understand better in the process. But the minute anything that has to do with mental health or reasonably living together, not believing people is very dangerous, okay? None of this is to say that these people are not difficult to deal with, but at least we have a sense of some of the things now that they may have been through, whereas before we had no idea. Does that mean that anyone should allow narcissistic or borderline people to disrespect or abuse them? Absolutely not. But we have to be realistic about our expectations for their recovery. If you are in love with someone with either one of these conditions, understand that it will take a minimum of 5 years of therapy for either of them to begin to recover. All right? So I would never suggest that anyone stay in a relationship waiting for anyone with either of these diagnoses to recover. The best you can do is get them into therapy and persuade them that if they can look at their life and make some changes, it will be better. Okay? But don't ever wait. And that's no exaggeration, at least 5 years. Most importantly, they have to really want to recover and work hard and steadily at it. But remember, if you have one of these conditions, you grew up in a pretty crazy family where you may not have seen anything reasonable at all.
Yep.
So it's hard.
So all they knew was manipulative behavior,
Sure.
Doing whatever they can to survive.
Absolutely. And there's an awful lot of survival stuff in both of these conditions, yeah. So, but, never would I suggest that. Many love-stricken people are blown away by the seriousness of the diagnosis and the length of time it usually takes. So I have lots of people say to me, well, how long, if I can get so-and-so into therapy, how long will it take? And I think they expect me to say 6 months, but I'm not going to be dishonest, ever, right? And you're in a much better negotiating position with them if you leave them and set limits. As long as you continue to act like this, I can't live with you and I'm not going to.
Yep.
All right.
Margaret's great at setting limits.
Oh yeah, I worked well. I worked with an awful lot of borderlines. I'm going to give you a couple examples of limit setting. All right, so that's what I have to say for this segment.
All right, so hopefully this has been helpful for you to understanding, why people become manipulative, and you see some of the most extreme situations and people that do these kind of behaviors. Obviously, you don't have to be a narcissist or a borderline to manipulate people to get your needs met.
We've all done it.
It's just that these are the most extreme conditions and traumatic conditions, so these people are just terrified of so many things.
Absolutely. And I think narcissistic is the easiest. It's easier to hide than borderline. If you're a borderline, you're out doing crazy things. But if you're a narcissist, you present yourself to your partner as perfect and logical and make them feel crazy. Okay?
It's so important to have a relationship where you can tell people what you need and expect that they'll give it to you most of the time. Not all of the time.
Not all of the time?
Because nobody's going to meet your needs all the time.
Right.
Even the best partners in the world, they have their own needs that they have to be met too. And so you have to find that balance within your relationships of getting your needs met and meeting their needs. And it's not easy to do that.
No.
If you come across somebody with these severe issues, they're going to find a way to make it about them. Mm-hmm. And they're so good at it, Margaret, that you can't out manipulate them. You can't outsmart them because it's on this deep level. Their wound is so deep. You know what I mean? The average person is going to try and think, how can I get around it? But they can't.
Well, there are some things, the antidote to anything really crazy that happens in relationships is honesty, okay? I don't know what happened to you. I can see from your behavior that it was severe, and it's not fair, and I want you to have an easier life than you've had. It's kind of hard to argue with that.
It's also kind of hard to say.
Well, Of course, I've said it 5,000 million times, so it's easy for me. Your behavior tells me you're not okay at all. And since I'm your partner, I care about that. And your average borderline will listen. The narcissist will tell you you're crazy. Okay?
Distort reality.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, reality is the answer, because this is all about a distortion of reality.
Yeah.
Okay? And I have said to people, you're not going to make me feel crazy because I know better. I don't want to make you feel crazy either, but you have to stop doing X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
All right. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Hopefully you found this one helpful. And of course, if you want to get our help personally, you could do that on my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Skype. Margaret, of course, is available for Skype coaching.
If you feel that I can be helpful, please sign up.
Just click on Margaret on the top of the website to do that. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
I'm Coach Margaret.
And we will talk with you soon. To get my help personally, go to askcraig.net and click on Schedule Coaching and choose the option that works best for you. I do email coaching or Skype. To schedule a coaching with Margaret, click on Margaret on the top of the page and order a Skype with her. For the Knowledge Creative Healing course, click on the link at the top of the page and click Get Started Now.